Hello, world. My name is Ashley Collins. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The Breakup Diaries. There's a bit of an echo, so I'm going to not talk as fast as I normally do. Oh, we eliminated it. Perfect. Can you hear me, Tim? We can't hear you at all. Can't hear you at all.
And that's what I'm afraid of. So, what if we move this away? Is there still a crazy echo?
Not as bad.
Yeah. I think it's because the two mic sources were too near to each other. So I'm just going to set this away. Just have a side view.
This needs to be on your face. A side angle is fine.
Yeah. All good.
Perfect. And now it looks really cool like that too.
And now people can see, I guess, a little peek into my studio, a little setup I have going on here.
I like that a lot. That's dope. Okay. Yay! We're cool. We're professionals. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am here with, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Timothy Thompson. My art name is pretty simple. It's Tim, although it may soon be changed to Trill Kennedy. Kind of just been doing some growth, some soul searching, and trying to find a way to tie the message together into a name that is essentially an alter ego for some of the things that I want to express to the world. That's a little bit more creative than just using my name, because that's essentially what I started like. I started off, I was just like, I'm just going to call myself Tim because I didn't really see any need to be named any differently than what I was. So I just put a one in the middle and was like, let's go. I just want to make this music. So I've been producing, performing, and writing and recording under the moniker Tim for the past couple of years, but it may be changing in the coming months. So stay tuned.
And what was the potential name? Can you say that for us again?
Trill Kennedy, Trill, and then Kennedy.
Why that?
Kennedy because, wait, were you going to ask me why? I don't want to jump the gun.
No, yeah. Why that name? Why?
So this actually is kind of a callback to when I first started. So I've been doing music for a good long while, but I didn't dedicate myself full time to it until a few years ago. Like I've been performing and writing since I was like 10, doing church raps with my cousins. And back in 2013, I actually started dabbling in production, just using FL Studio, like a really cheap version of it. And as 2015 rolled around, I was using the name of two families in American history that have really left their mark in America, the Carnegies and the Kennedys.
Okay.
The Carnegies, as you know, one of those dynastic families from the 19th century into the 20th century. Andrew Carnegie himself was a steel man that really revolutionized the Pittsburgh area. And I really liked what he did as far as being that patriarch for his family that raised their name up to a status that it's now part of the American lexicon, the familial lexicon, you know? So for me, when I first started going really hard with the music as far as, I want to try and do this on a semi-daily basis, it was Carnegie Kennedy, but just CK for short. And then, you know, I was producing, I was writing, made a couple of songs, and it felt a bit forced.
Okay.
And so I kind of went back to the drawing board and I was like, scrap it. I'm just going to be Tim, you know? So I rolled with Tim, just put a one in the middle. On my social media handles are still like that T1M music sound for Twitter, Instagram, and even Facebook. It's just, well, it's at T1M music. So on Twitter, it's at T1M music. On Instagram, it's at T1M music. And my Facebook page is simply facebook.com/T1M music. Same thing for SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/T1M music. It was kind of, I just went with it, used that to brand myself across the board. And then this year was kind of another shift in life. And there's just a whole lot to this story. I don't know how deep we're going to get into what I guess the past few years have been like, but this year was kind of another seismic shift in my life, and a series of seismic shifts over the past few years, just what I've been going through personally. And so I've been talking it over with a mentor of mine in the music world, and just trying to find ways to make sure that what I create, because while he initially did like the moniker Tim, he also suggested maybe something that would be more appealing to a wider audience. For me, I still respect what the Kennedys have done. Not everything they've done. There's certainly some family secrets there that I don't necessarily admire, but I admire the heart that JFK, for all his flaws, had for the people of America. For what their family has at least tried to do, imperfect though they may be, they've represented ideals that are the furtherance of the American dream for all people. At least publicly, politically. And like I said, privately, I don't know all their lives. And there's certainly some things that I've heard happen in the private life that, I personally wouldn't agree with. But I still respect the fact that JFK, what he wanted to do for our country was, I think, admirable. And who paid, at the end of the day, he paid the ultimate sacrifice for it. He was technically the third president assassinated, but the second president immediately assassinated. People think it's just Lincoln and Kennedy, but I believe Taft was also assassinated, but he just died several weeks later after the attempt. Anyways, yeah, so that's the name change.
So can you explain what you do music-wise for those of you that don't know your music?
Why I did music?
What do you do? You say that you're a musician, but that's such a broad word. So like tell them what kind of music you create.
Okay. So as far as my music, and I just adjusted the volume because I think it may be some of the feedback from my phone. I wanted to find a way to maybe mute it, but I don't want to mute the audio from my phone, so I'm just turning it down. But as far as the music that I create, I mean, initially started off as just plain hip hop, and then as I started to create my first project, because all of it's self-taught, so I got my MacBook, I got some little 5-inch monitor speakers, and a little cheap desk from Walmart, and decided that every day I was going to dedicate time to producing. So when I first started, obviously a lot of my original influences were hip hop. Like growing up, I was listening to a lot of Jay, hell, even DMX and the Rough Riders, Lil Wayne, and the Hot Boys. Those were some of my earlier influences growing up, but really it was heavy on the Jay-Z. Like he was an artist that I would listen to day in, day out, day in, day out. And then as I started producing, another one of my influences, who I think we'll have a chance to talk about later, is Kanye. I really appreciate what Kanye does with sound. He is someone who I think has a real appreciation, not just for the power of music, but for the power of sound in and of itself. And so I found myself being pulled in some, I want to call them poppy directions, but really I would just call it like astro sounds, like spacey, big, heavy in the reverb, but just weird sounds and really haunting melodies, but not dark, but haunting in that they're catchy and very ambient. And so there was this mix that I was trying to go for, especially on my first project. When I just started producing, it was just like, okay, how can I blend a futuristic sound with my hip hop roots, still keep strong songwriting? Because at the end of the day, for me, songwriting is really important. I want to, at the end of the day, for each song that I create, there's still a message that I'm trying to convey for each song. And so the way the words come together is still really important for me. Being able to convey those words in a manner that's not just coherent, but that also makes sense in the scheme of the song is also important. So yeah, creating that first project, it was a mix of taking that original rap sound that I had and then mixing it with some of the later influences and trying to make it my own, not just being too derivative, but really trying to find some songs in that project that were amazing. And at the time, there was this producer up in Atlanta that I had a chance to meet, amazing producer by the name of 5am. And when I first got there, we kind of clicked very quickly. And he's still working on some groundbreaking stuff up there. But when we first met, it was, he had this cachet of music that was crazy. And so he ended up being a contributing producer on half of the project. I produced half of the songs. He produced the other half. It was 14 tracks. And, because he had this really large like I said, this cache of tracks that he'd been producing over years and years and years. It was like some far out stuff that he's like, well, you know, not a lot of people work on this, but he sent it to me. I was like, yo, yeah, I love this. I love this. And so it ended up being a blend of sounds that his mind had already tapped into and created, and then some sounds that I myself was personally just kind of discovering and playing with at the time. Even looking back on it now, I look back in hindsight and it's like my productions I still think are relatively solid, but I was also still learning at the time too. Like, because I do all my own things, you know, I'm my own tracking engineer and mixing engineer and producer and writer, and so there's all these things I have to take into account. And I was still learning the full process of what it takes to create a professional sounding track, something that I can put out and say, yeah, like I'm proud of this. And I'm still proud of the work at the time, but obviously looking back in hindsight, there are techniques that I know now that I didn't know then. And there's more due diligence that I do now in terms of whenever I'm recording and mixing a song that I didn't do then. Like, I had certain recording techniques down, but I wasn't doing as many. When you're producing a record, right? Especially when you're trying to do something that you're going to send out to the masses, you want to make sure that your audio playback on the song, that it sounds good on all devices, because people aren't just going to be listening to it from one device. People may listen to it through their phone, or they may be listening to it in their car, or through their speakers at home, or through headphones. And so there's all these different mediums that you have to ensure that it sounds good through. And that was the big thing back then. Even with that project, Sagittarius, that was the first one. I did it on my 26th birthday. That was when I released it. And I did it to challenge myself to see, can I write a project that expresses where I have been and where I am right now in life? And can I meet this deadline? And pardon the sniffle, I'm still kind of getting over this flu. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do with it, was take those original rap hip hop influences, my chops that I was working on as a producer, and my skills that I was working on as a mix engineer and eventually mastering engineer. And there was just so much that went into that project. Like, in order to meet the deadline, a lot of people don't know this, I had to make an overnight drive back to Georgia, because when I was first here, I come from a very Christian family. We'll just say it like that. And so if you make any music that is not within the realm of gospel, it's not something that's going to be wholly embraced. So at the time, I'd been producing and working both in Georgia and here, but I came back here to put the final touches on it the final week before the 12th, because I had some neighbors downstairs in Georgia who, our first encounter was them calling the police when I was playing the music maybe at like a third volume, and I knew it wasn't overly loud. But they called the cops, and the cops didn't even know what was going on. They came and said, we got a noise complaint. We don't hear anything. I said, yeah, the music's still playing. You guys can't even hear it here at the front door. And they called the cops about this. And not wanting to cause any problems, I said, you know what? All right, there's a house, you know, the house was essentially empty back here home. I think it was just my little brother that was here. So I drove back and said, I'm going to finish up the project on I'm going to finish up the project here at home. And I was in the middle of finishing up, and my mom came back. So she kind of heard, you know, some stuff, and she was like, nah, like, I don't want this kind of music in my house. And I was like, well, you know, like, I have a deadline to meet. And, you know, long story short, you know, it was made clear that, you know, I couldn't finish in the house. And I don't necessarily get too upset about it at the time. I was angry, but it was an 8-hour overnight drive back to freezing Atlanta. Because I still couldn't do it, because whenever I was trying to put some of the final mastering touches on the track. So whenever you're mastering, you have to listen to the music on different things, from your monitors to other things. When you're listening to it, you have to listen to it at both low volume and high volume, because it may sound clear at low volume, and then when you turn it up, it's clipping, because that's what you want to get, especially when you're talking about a good track, is you want to make sure that at low volume, it's still crystal clear and very present, and that at high volume, it's crystal clear and present without being overpowering to the listener. I needed a space where I could make sure that at high volume, I was still maintaining, you know, my audio fidelity, and at low volume, I was still able to make sure that it still was coming through crystal clear as well. So I had a mentor up in North Georgia, where I was living at the time. He loaned me his basement as a space for the 24 hours that I needed to really put the finishing touches on the project and get it released that day. And that was a whole other thing in itself. So yeah, there was an overnight drive with some tears. I still have some videos recorded from that because it was just, but it showed me at the time exactly how much the music meant. As difficult as it was, the sacrifice was like, it's gonna be worth it because there's something I think great that's gonna be birthed from this, and I think it's a step on the journey that, you know, well, how much do you really love it? Are you willing to take these steps to make sure that this project can come out? So I made the drive. It was low 30s in Georgia at the time. His basement did not have a heater, so I had to bring a jacket down there, do my setup, make sure that I could find a good acoustic space, because that's the other thing when it comes to doing music is you have to make sure that the room you're recording in acoustically is accurate so it can give you a proper reflection of what your song sounds like. Went set up, you know, and took that day in those freezing temperatures to finish up the mixes, make sure it could get done. My older brother, who's a graphic designer, you know, one of those little pieces of serendipity, that blessing that I have someone in my life that does that. But it was a really simple but really nice piece of album artwork that he did with just the horoscope symbol, you know, the Sagittarius arrow. He mocked it up, did a piece of album cover art for me, and so I went, did it, and yeah, that's the story of how Sagittarius came to be, is writing some last minute preparations and then almost not getting it released on time because I had to make an interstate trip between Orlando and Atlanta, well, Alpharetta, which is about 45 minutes north of Atlanta. I had to make that trip just to make sure that I could get the project finished and released on time. But, you know, it happened, it's out. And like I said, in hindsight, could it have been better as far as the mixes go? Sure. But it's still something I'm proud of because it was the very first project that I had put out fully where I'd had my full hand in it. And yeah, you know, it was the start. And it's been the start of a journey. There's so much that goes into music. It's more than just releasing a project or doing more than just releasing a project or writing for the sake of writing. It's music is a journey and a process, man. To get a song or even an album or a mixtape done, it takes a lot of effort, a lot more than people ever really see on the surface. They just see the final product.
Yeah. Word. Okay. So how would you describe yourself as an artist? Like, what genre do you think you fall under?
Genre, hip hop and R&B, if I had to narrow it down. There's some more experimental places that I'm taking some of my next projects, because before I started even doing, you know, the digital producing, I'm a musician first and foremost. People, at least from FSU, may probably know that I was with the poetic Team ADHD, known for mostly playing guitar during some of our performances of poetic lyricism and with the collegiate poetry slam. But so guitar was an instrument that I picked up at FSU. Ironically, I actually started learning the real guitar because I was terrible at the video game Guitar Hero. And I was like, I'm just gonna learn the real thing. I had a suite mate, not a roommate, but I had a suite mate that was a guitarist as well. But he was like, dude, I never used this thing. So he showed me my first few chords. The first few chords I ever learned were F, A minor, C, G. Well, actually, it's C, G, A minor, F. I believe that's how it goes. Don't quote me, but it's "Let It Be" by the Beatles. That's the chord progression.
Oh, okay.
It's the very first song I ever learned on a real guitar, and learning those bar chords was damn near impossible at the time. But yeah, so hip hop R&B is the genre, and that's yeah, that's what I classify it as.
Cool. Who are your biggest influences?
Primarily Sean Carter, Jay-Z. That's what the world knows him as. He was like a surrogate father figure, and I listened to him. It's funny because I was introduced to him by my older brother, who was listening to him as well. But I mean, he's someone who I've had a chance to witness his evolution as a person through his music, from Reasonable Doubt all the way up through, you know, Blueprint Volume 1 to, you know, Black Album, all that. Like, you get to, he's someone who you've seen how he goes from this hustler talking about life on the street to a businessman talking about his successes and relishing in them. Even now to he's someone who I also think has been breaking new ground in the genre. In that rap was always thought to be a young man's game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's someone who at 47 put out this amazing piece of work in the 444 project. And so I look at what he has been able to do as an artist as a huge source of inspiration for me personally and artistically. It's not to say that I agree with all he's done, but he's someone who's had a really heavy influence in my life in terms of the wisdom he would pass down through his music. There's a lot of wisdom. He's a very observant individual, and it comes through not just in the way he's able to put together his rhyme schemes and tell us a beautiful story in almost all of his tracks, but just the little tidbits of wisdom that he passed down was also something that made me gravitate towards his music. After him, like I said, there's Kanye, who I look at solely as a musical inspiration. Someone who I'd obviously love to work with one day, who I don't always agree with for some of the personal things that he expresses, but musically, I think he is a creative genius. Someone that, personally, I was like, come on, bro, but he's someone who has had an influence. Jesus Walks, All Falls Down.
Yeah.
He's been on it, and he's someone who had to work really hard to get his platform, because at first he was just known as this producer that was making some of the best cuts on Jay-Z's project, some of the most soulful cuts. And then he had to fight to have his breakthrough and say, no, I'm not just a producer, I'm an artist as well, and a damn good one. So I see a kind of a kinship there, because for me, I'm still evolving as an artist. And nowadays, I find myself working in a capacity as a producer and songwriter as well, not just for myself, but for other artists. And I'm trying to find this balance between placing a priority on my creative endeavors while at the same time helping others realize their creative visions.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you have any mentees?
Do I have any mentees? No, I wouldn't call them mentees per se. It's literally just artists that I work with. I don't know if I call it a mentee or mentor relationship. It's just having a chance to collaborate with those people.
True.
Yeah.
Do you do any performances?
Man, last performance was a while ago. Last performance was, I believe, Squad Season 2, or was it? No, it was A3. It was A3C last year.
Okay.
I had this amazing opportunity from this artist up in Atlanta, Shalom Little. He goes by the name, his artist name is Shalom. It's Shalom Little, but he had a slot. He had some time that he felt he could help some friends with, and he offered me some time within his slot at this at one of the opening shows at A3C at this really well-known venue up in Atlanta. And so I had a chance to go and perform a few songs. I did 3 songs, and it was really well received. I do think that I still want to work on my stage shows, just because there's always this, and it's funny, I was watching an interview at the weekend, he said it was the same thing for him. Recording a song in a studio and the performance that you give there, that's just one part of artistry. There's also being able to go out and express that same energy that you had in the studio before a live audience. It's never a matter of nerves. It's about trying to always bring that same energy, even greater energy, because there are some artists who are dope in the studio, but maybe not that great on stage. And there are some artists who are great on stage, but maybe in the studio, they're still a bit rough. And so there's always this balance you have to strike. I think for me, that's something I definitely still want to work on. But yeah, man, it's been a little while since the last performance. Like I said, just had a lot of life stuff that happened this year where I had to take a step back. I was in the hospital. We can get into that, I guess, a little later. But there's just a lot. So that was my last performance. Was A3C last year.
Oh, dope. Where is it at? Where did my questions go? So what are some of your biggest struggles as an artist? Other than
biggest struggles as an artist. For me personally, self-promotion hasn't always been a forte. There's always some way. I don't know why I always feel some type of way about it, but the biggest artists in the world are also some of the best self-promoters, or they have some of the best promotional teams.
Oh yeah.
Even if you're not making crazy great music, as long as you're good at selling yourself, you can really pop and make it out there.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's been one of my biggest weak points is that self-promotion, being shameless about it. Like,
I think so.
I'm just expressing, I think, because for me, I'm at this point now where I know I can.
I feel like I always see you like talk about your stuff on your social media, but probably because I'm just going at the right time, maybe.
Maybe because, man, I could definitely be on it more. And there's a well, let's see now. Look at that. Anyways, there's a lot that goes into it as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And so that self-promotion is just one of those things that goes into it. For me, I've found that I'll push my stuff really hard at the outset, but there's a consistency that you have to be willing to push your music with when you create it. It's not just about when it initially gets released, is you have to try and push it, because that's how the wave gets built. And for me, I've definitely been lacking in that area, if I'm being honest with myself. And that's one of those things. Go ahead.
Because there's a window, there's a window.
Yeah.
Some
people, for me, I don't ever want it to necessarily be some people have it and some people don't, but the reality is, like, there are certain factors that go into not only making something go viral, but in building. So people want consistency. They want to see that you post about it over. But then you also have a community. You have to have a community that's built up, a dedicated community that's vested not only in your success, but that just really likes what you put out.
Yeah.
And sees that you care about it enough to consistently go out. Just like I said, I think I've still been lacking in that area. It's not from lack of caring. It's just social media can be a chore sometimes.
Yeah.
Because in my life, there are other things that I concern myself with other than the music. There's the world and society at large that I have a heart for society and people. And so for me, I know there are even some people that have me on social media and they'll see me post political stuff and be like, oh my God, this guy posts politics. I'm like, yeah, man, like, politics are important. How we run society is extremely important. Like, all my music is meaningless if society breaks down. There has to be an audience that reaches out, because all of our problems really pale in comparison to if we let all this go to waste,
Yeah.
So that's one of those things where for me, I feel like I need to work on it, is pushing this stuff more, because I'm at this stage where I know that if I want to produce something, I can produce something dope, and I can do it in a half an hour.
Yeah.
There are other ones where I go and visit, but I can sit down right now and I can go on my digital audio workstation, and I can sit down at this keyboard. I can get a tempo, I can get a melody, I can create a beat pattern all from scratch, and it'll be hard. I can sample, and it's gonna be hard. Like, I'm at a point where I know I can make something dope as a producer. Now, for me, what I'm still working on as an artist is, okay, I know I can make good songs, but I'm no longer just concerned with making a good song. Like, I want to make great music that has staying power, that resonates. And that's a bridge that I feel like I'm still crossing in my development as an artist and as a person. There's still growth in that area that I have to do. So,
So, thank you for that honesty. I like that a lot. What would be your we're start this over again. What would be your biggest advice to someone who's just starting?
Who's just starting? Okay. It depends. It depends on what they're doing. Like, if you're an artist and you're just starting, my biggest piece of advice is one, know why you're creating it. Don't just make music for the sake of saying, oh, I'm doing music. Have a reason behind your art. Two, consistency is key. And I'm not just talking about promotion in terms of going out on social media and promoting yourself, but be consistently in the studio, be consistently writing.
Yeah.
Doing it every day, even if it's a little bit every day, produces greater results than just trying to go gung-ho all at once, usually. Now, it's not to say that masterpieces can be created overnight, because sometimes there have been times where I've sat down on some days and I've produced like 15 instrumentals on that day where I just had all this stuff that had been built up in my head, and I just sit down and it's like, okay, that's done. Arrangement's done. Boom, next one. And I'll sit down and over the course of 10, 11 hours, just bang out these tracks. But if you, what I tried to hold myself to, and which I did for the most part, which I'm kind of proud to be able to look back on it, was I was like, I just want to make 1 or 2 instrumentals a day. Really just one. If I can make an instrumental a day, I'm happy.
Do you sell them?
Yeah.
Do you sell them?
I sell them when needed. I feel like early Kanye in that there's just so much that, like, when I make it, I'm like, okay, I hear this idea and I write for it. But I do make and sell them to people who special request it. Yes. And for people who want to know the prices, if you just want an MP3 mix down of one of my beats on a 10,000 track lease, which means you get to do 10,000 streams of it and 5,000 sales, it is $200. If you want a wave file of said, it's still just a single file, but it's in a wave with a 20,000 streams, 10,000 sales, $250. And for a full ownership and stems of the file, with you own it, you can stream it unlimited, sell it, whatever you want to do. It's $300.
Yo, I need a better skill.
I mean, I'm very good at what I do. Like I said, that's the one thing is I know that when it comes to, especially when it comes to my producing, like, I know I'm dope. That's one thing. That's one thing you have to also, that's the other bit of advice. Know that you're dope. If you're starting out, whether as an artist or producer, you have to know and trust and believe in your skills. And don't just say it. Make sure that you work to become that. But yeah, that consistency, know what it is that you want to talk about or what it is that really drives you to write and create. And then the other thing is networking, but you have to be intelligent. One thing I've learned is that there are a lot of people that are good at talking, but not everyone is strong on taking actions and following through. And it gets discouraging. I'm not gonna lie. Especially if you're starting out, you're gonna run into a lot of people that talk more than they do, and it'll discourage you as an artist because you're like, well, what the heck? But through time, you will find people that are about it. Like there's several artists from Atlanta that I've personally seen the amount of work that they put into creating a project, from Jay Smithick to John Average. There's a couple of people I've had the pleasure of working with intimately. Even 5am himself, I know that he still creates every day, and this is a man with a library of beats and music that he's made, like tens of thousands of songs built up over the course of a couple of decades almost of work, where he's just someone, I want to say, but thousands, definitely thousands. I don't know if it's tens of thousands, but it's definitely thousands of songs. But there are people that do. And align yourself with the doers.
Yeah. You said his name is 5am?
Yeah.
The number 5? I've never heard of him before.
He's like I want to say like an underground legend up there, man. When I first got up there, yeah. This place is called the Dojo. It's this home studio. You go in there, but yeah, man, he does dope work.
Is it the number 5 or the spelling 5?
No, the number 5 and 5 and then AM. I believe that's his Instagram handle, is at 5am ATL.
Oh, there he is.
And his alias is Crate Digger Jones.
Crate Digger?
Mm-hmm. He's digging through the crates for his samples.
Oh, I dig that. Oh, I like that. Oh, I lost my questions now because I was okay. What's the biggest impact you want to leave with people?
What's the biggest impact that I want to leave?
Yes.
Boy, there's a lot. So for me, music is a love and a passion, but I know that it's just one part of my identity as a human being, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the music is a vehicle. It's something that gives me joy and that creative release, that catharsis. There's also this love that I feel when there's a new song that I've written or a production that I've made that really resonates with me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, there's a feeling that can't quite be duplicated. But for me, music is a vehicle. Um, for my life, the legacy that I want to leave behind is, and I've had to kind of modulate it over the years because there are people that I realize have come and live in this world. And for every great person that comes into existence during a century span or a generation, they move the societal needle. So let's say this is the needle of society. They move it like this, incrementally. These are the great ones. They move it like this. No person has been able to shift it like this. Like even Jesus himself, like Jesus came and he moved the needle like this. And that's if you believe in him, right?
Yeah.
Because there's also the debate, was he real? Was he just a figurehead as a part of religion? For me, I stray on the side of belief that he was a person in history. Now, there's a whole can of worms we can get into on what has happened since his life and death and how his story has been used and co-opted that I won't get into here. But not to say that I even see myself in that light, but I want to be someone that also moves the needle like this. I think people are born for the times that they live in. And granted, personally, I'm also someone that believes in reincarnation. I believe that we have chances to come to this world, live, experience, and live other lifetimes. We're needed. People are needed for the times that they're born in, right? There's a part of me that's like, man, I don't know if I could have been born back in slavery times, and I don't have any recollections of a past life during that time. But I think about where we are now in society, and I think we're at another one of those crossroads of society where it's like, it's either what's happening is going to tear us apart or we find a way to do better together. Because at the end of the day, it's either we have total anarchy and a breakdown of society or we get back to a place of sanity and reason.
Yes.
And so for me, I want to be at this place where
wow.
I have an impact that I think helps bring society a little bit closer together. And like I said, for me, my music is one vehicle to do it, but it's a portion of developing a platform. There's a platform that I want to build and develop because I do think that there are some ideas I have for the world that can help us on a whole. And I never want to get too egotistical about it because I think there's this dangerous place that you can cross into and you're like, well, I think I have ideas that are good for the world. It's like, well, what makes you think? And there's never a place where I want to get to hubris where it's like, I know what's best for everyone, because at the end of the day, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I don't know what's best for everyone. That's one thing that I've had to learn, is that we're all so different. That's what life teaches you. It's what it's taught me. And so my goal in life is to maybe try and push that societal needle a little bit like this. And my life story is still being written. But the Einsteins of the world. And that's why I said I had to kind of, there are people that I look back on in history who I want to emulate, but their life stories help to put things into perspective for me as far as what you're able to do. Because Nelson Mandela had to go to jail for 27 years. That's as long as I've been alive. Yeah. He had to go into prison and suffer for his people before he came out and was able to make the most of his story to eventually become the president of his homeland, right? I look at someone like him, and for all the work that he did, he just shifted the needle like this.
Yeah.
Einstein opened up our eyes to the secrets of the universe, and he shifted the needle like this. Now, granted, it was a bit of a bigger shift because E = mc squared gave us the atomic bomb. That gave us the power to just wipe ourselves off the face of the planet. It was a big shift, but it's still just, in the grand scheme of things, it was a tick on the clock. And if I'm able to push that needle just a little bit in bringing humanity a little closer together, one thing I told them is I'm not trying to be out here and be a martyr for some cause. It's tough to do. Like, you look at Dr. King, he talked a message of peace. He wanted peaceful change, and he was still assassinated. And then you look at like the Malcolm X's, and he was a little more aggressive about his methodology for change, and he was still assassinated. And you look at President Kennedy, who there was a host of factors leading up to his assassination, but he was seeking to desegregate. That's one of the big things. Was he was pushing for civil rights and desegregation in the South, and he was assassinated. And so society teaches you that when you're trying to do these things that are considered monumental, that if it's too much, especially when it comes to even like the political arena, people are willing to just take those people out. And so that's why I said, for me, I just want to spread a message to people that as a whole, as society, we have to learn, one, how to empathize more with our neighbors.
Yes.
We live in a society in America that really preaches individualism above all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that, while it does inspire great individual feats, it's not sustainable in the long run, because at the end of the day, we still have to share this physical space, the physical land of America, not just societal, structures that we set up, but literal physical space. We have to share it with each other. And we have to come to this place where we have to learn how to share with each other in the best way possible. And I think there are people who are vested in making sure that we don't come together as close as possible, because it's easier to make a lot of money off people. There's a study that the greatest state of mind to predict consumer shopping, that produces the greatest rate of consumerism, where people are spending their money at the highest rate, is fear. When people are afraid, they find comfort in purchasing new things and buying stuff. And there are people that know this and wield it to a degree that I think is relatively harmful. And it's very selfish, I think, on those people's parts, in the pursuit of, whether it be short or even longer term profits, to drive us as people apart, because we definitely have more in common than we are different. One of the things I was talking with a friend of mine a few days back was, I look at even the immigration crisis in America, right? There are people, I look at how there is this really huge undercurrent of racism towards Mexico and Central America.
Mm-hmm.
It's driving that debate. And sometimes it's on its face. Sometimes people say, no, it's not about that. It's about laws, and we have laws and statutes. But there's also this undercurrent of racism. Mm-hmm. And I say, man, this is super confusing, because Catholicism, one of the biggest religions in the world, in fact, it's still the biggest now. Islam is on the rise, but Catholicism still holds, one in every 3 people is a Christian or Catholic.
Yeah.
2 billion people. Catholicism is one of the main world religions, and it's a dominant religion here in the United States. But the other thing is, Catholicism is a dominant religion in Mexico.
It is.
And so it's like, you guys are praying to the same God, worshiping the same Jesus, you have the same saints, and it's just a difference in language. And yet there's still all this hate between people for what seems like a cultural difference, when really it's not really a great cultural difference, because religion is one of those cultural things where, especially when it comes to just people in the world, religion for us as humanity has been a cultural vehicle. A lot of our values are passed down through religious ideals.
Yeah.
And so when I see what's going on, that's what lets me know, like, our problems aren't nearly as complex as we make them, but I think people are far more fearful of change, or of admitting wrong, or just saying, well, maybe I need to step back and see what I'm doing wrong. Because we're at this point now where people in America exist in 2 different echo chambers: red versus blue, left versus right, liberal versus conservative. For the most part, you're going to fall into one of those 2 camps. And it's this dichotomy of ideals. Now, personally, one of the reasons why I don't consider myself a conservative on the social level is because there's nothing socially that I think we've gotten so perfect that we need to be fighting to hold it in place. Like, society should evolve. There's a constant forward progress and march of society. There's never been a point in history where it's like, yeah, we're perfect. This is it. This is utopia. Nothing else needs to change. There have always, at every point in history, been disadvantaged people being taken advantage of. Yeah. And so the march of history is progress. What halts that march or impedes it is conservatism. Now, granted, I consider myself a conservative in some ways, but fiscally. Now, that doesn't extend it. I think that, especially when it comes to like the US, like, yeah, our government should spend our tax dollars responsibly. I think that when they're taken from us, they shouldn't just go towards having the biggest military in the world. Like, we should have education that's much stronger than where we currently rank in the world for all the money that we have as a nation, that our infrastructure as a nation should be better. Homelessness and poverty shouldn't be a crisis in the wealthiest nation on earth. I was just reading earlier today that roughly 40% of food. Now, I don't know if it was specifically in America or in the developed world, but 40% of food goes to waste. Like, we only eat 60%. We consume 60% of what we purchase for food, and we just throw the rest away, whether we let stuff spoil and throw it away. And there
Yeah,
are people that are starving. And
that's true.
so for us, there is a point where as people, we're going to have to learn how to do better, and to not just see personal responsibility as a talking point, but as an actual thing where, okay, I take responsibility for my actions, acknowledge my wrongs, and try and do better as a person, try and listen to my neighbor. Now, for me, there are certain places where you cut it off because you have to hold values. Like for me, I don't embrace any kind of racism or phobia as something that I see as a viewpoint. That is something that I need to ingest,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's really no justification of hatred unless the what you hate is something that diametrically you can say causes harm to another human being in its expression. So for me, I hate racism because on its face and even in subtlety, it propagates the idea that certain people are deserving of maltreatment, mistreatment, or subjugation.
Mm-hmm.
That you are worse than I am because of the way you look or because of something that you do, right? Well, granted, no, something that you do that's valid, but like just based on looks or ethnic background, you know? um, Xenophobia, the idea that immigrants that come into the country are dangerous, that they don't have, that they contribute more harm to the cultural fabric than good. I don't embrace that. Homophobia. I am both Jamaican and Christian. That's two backgrounds. Like even in Jamaica right now, gay people are still in the middle of a cultural revolution, so to speak. They're still gaining a footing in society because Jamaica is still a country where you can get murdered for being gay or transgender. It's
Mm-hmm.
my cultural heritage, but it's one that I think I, as a Jamaican American, I'm striving to change as well. Because at the end of the day, I was talking with somebody. One of the things that I do right now for work is I'm a political canvasser. So I go door to door every day. And it's not a job that doesn't come without its perils. We can talk about, being called the N-word on the job, or talking with racists, because I have had several encounters with racists. But one of the reasons why I love the job is that you do get a chance to engage with people. And I've learned that in life, listening is super powerful.
Yeah,
Um, People open up to you when you listen.
yeah.
But most of the time, like even now, like I'm talking as a way, but generally in conversation, I prefer to listen because I like to learn. And through listening, you can glean bits of wisdom, even if it's from someone that you don't think, well, there's not much I can learn. If you listen, there's always something to learn from someone else. And I was talking with someone, an avid Trump supporter. This was just last week. And the start of our encounter was relatively negative because I obviously, like I said, I have more progressive ideals that I think I hold on to, and I think it's for the good of society. And this person at first was raising her voice at me. Mind you, one of the other things I've had to do for my job now is I've been brushing up on my bilingual skills. I've had to relearn Spanish. So at first she was speaking with me in Spanish, thinking that I wouldn't understand until I began to converse with her. And then about, it's like 5 minutes in, she was like, "Oh, I was just testing you to see if you knew." But an avid Trump supporter, someone who said that Dr. Ford, during her testimony, she called her, like a whore. And I was just listening. I'm like, and I listened because you hear kind of this pent up frustration. But
Yep.
then as people begin to talk more, you begin to see the layers that underpin their values, why they choose to express the thoughts they do, why she would say something she did, and why she would, as someone who is of Hispanic descent, support a president that openly has denigrated people of Latin American descent before. Um, it was an interesting conversation because a lot of times, and at the end of it, there was a more pleasant goodbye than there was the hello.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I expressed to her is that one of the reasons why I'm not gonna, yell back and forth with you or something is because we've gotten to a place now in this country where we can't talk with each other, right?
Yeah.
Where no one wants to hear anything. And it's sad we can't just exist in these. There are literally almost two different realities. There's the Fox News and conservative media reality where people with no morals and values are trying to tear apart the social fabric of America and ruin it. And then you have the liberal echo chamber where it's like racists and bigots who are afraid of change are literally trying to keep us in the Stonehenge in the Stonehenge age from a cultural perspective, who are unwilling to change and embrace others. And like I said, I speak with conservatives. I'm not going to sit here and say that I agree with their viewpoints on a whole, but when people start to break it down, you see why they think the way they think. And it's not to say that there's a ton of merit, but for example, there's another individual that I was speaking with who expressed his disdain at the fact that maybe if Andrew Gillum gets elected, that there'll be sanctuary cities in Florida. And he was saying that there's a rule of law, and like I said, for the most part, I just think, look, dude, I'm sorry that you don't feel like being able to embrace people from another culture. I'm sorry you feel that way. But there is I understand that in a country of laws where my family legally immigrated and we had to wait to come, I'm a first generation American, born here, my parents immigrated from Jamaica. And there is this rule of law, but I can also understand how people in dire and desperate situations, how sometimes the law just doesn't make sense if your life is in danger.
Yeah.
And I was attempting to express that to him. Let's say you have a neighbor who is in debt to a drug dealer or who is a drug dealer, and a rival dealer comes and shoots up at their house, and some of the bullets fly into your house and maybe hit you or a loved one. Bullets don't discriminate. But if you are in fear for your life, even if you have nothing to do with the dangerous situation going on against you, you don't necessarily always have time to wait for the laws to be convenient to you, because you could die and then your life is just over. And then you're just another statistic. And I've also learned through some of these conversations that sometimes it's like talking to a wall. People don't necessarily want to hear it. But at the end of the day, there is, I believe, a place of reconciliation we can come to as a society. We just have to be ready and willing to embrace that in certain instances, we're not as right as we think we are. Yeah. And I think that for a lot of us, and I do think it's on more the right side of the spectrum, there has to be a willingness to embrace change that there hasn't been before. Because at the end of the day, it's either you cause the collapse of society or we learn how to live peaceably with one another. And if we don't learn how to live peaceably with one another, then what is this all for? What's it all for? So that's the legacy that I want to leave, going back to your original question, is one where we can come together a bit closer as a society, because at the end of the day, we have these lifetimes wherewith we get to live and learn and express ourselves. People think that art is just limited to the traditional forms, but art is a way of life. Shout out to John Average, who I think helped make me a better artist through some of our conversations. He said, sometimes you just need to live life. That's one of the things that I've learned how to do now is I don't put as much pressure on myself, because one, through the creating every single day, I built myself up this library of music. So anytime I want to, not only that, but I developed the skill. So like I said, if I want to go produce something new, I can do it like this. But more importantly, there's songs that I think when the time is right, I'll be able to release them. And there's still directions that I'm experimenting with. But art is life, and life is art, at least in its purest expression. And if you pay enough attention, you can really be inspired by life, because there's always source of inspiration. But it's, what are you giving your attention to, and how much are you paying attention? Are you living mindlessly, or are you living mindfully? And so that's part of my artistic process still. But I'm living life right now because there's a greater legacy that I want to build. There's more to be done. And like I said, for me, my music is a vehicle. It's a vehicle of expression, to express frustration sometimes, to express my observations about what I'm seeing in the world sometimes, to express what's going on in my personal life sometimes. But sometimes there's also just a stepping back away from creating per se, to live, to ingest, to take in, to observe, to become inspired through what you observe. And so now I'm allowing myself to live more in these waves of life where it's like, okay, you create and observe, and then see how can your creation help others? How can it connect with others? Because music isn't the only art form and form of artistic expression. There's dance, there's writing, heck, even comedians. That's an art form. It's a form of art, being able to distill sometimes harsh life truths in a way that brings entertainment and joy and laughter to others. Yeah. Art is not just limited to one medium. there's different ways to live artfully. And I hope that as a society, we can get to a place where we don't just have a bunch of people seeking to suck money, energy, and attention from a bunch of other people, but where we can learn to live empathetically. Like, I want to be able to talk to some of the wealthiest people in the world and let them know, like, listen, you can have more empathy for others. Like, it's not just a matter of individual responsibility. Talking to even some wealthy people that I know, there's always this belief that, well, yeah, I got here on my own, but it's never true. It's not to say that people don't work hard for what they have. The reality is, hard work is just one tiny factor in the equation of success. It's one variable. There are other people that have to know and recognize your hard work. There has to be the timing of your work. Is it relevant for a need that's being filled at the time that you're working that hard? There are all these other factors that come into success, even extreme success. And I think it's imperative for those of us in society that have been blessed with financial success to not be caught up in the hubris of that success and say, like, oh, well, I did this on my own. Why should I care about anyone else? No. Like, we all have a responsibility to care for each other. And it's not to say that you're responsible for another person's actions or choices, because there are people that make bad decisions, right? But at the end of the day, if we can learn to make life as comfortable as we can for others without, it doesn't have to be free handouts or anything like that, but literally just taking the time to, like, if the wealthiest people in the world all got together right now, or even the wealthiest people in the US, and said, we want to eradicate homelessness and poverty in this country, it could be done in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the physical construction, even if you talk about the logistics of physically making it happen, in 6 months, we could erase homelessness. It'd be a thing of the past in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But we just have to get people to a point where they realize that with great power and, yes, great wealth comes a certain amount of responsibility. Like, I, for myself, know that whatever it is that I'm blessed with in this life, whether it be hundreds of thousands or millions or even billions of dollars, that money is not just for me to flex with.
Yeah.
Like, there is a desperate need in this world where people are going without. And for me, I know that whatever it is that I make, because it's not of just my own volition, because it's not just from my own efforts, but because there are all these other factors, that I want to try and ensure that other people not only have equal opportunities, but that other people can have an improvement in their lives because of the blessings, whatever it is that I receive. I think we're all called to do that, but we've been taught to just admire fame and glamour. And like I said, this whole notion of individualism trumping everything is it's what leads in, pardon me, that's I'm still getting over this sickness. So
no, you're totally fine. I actually need to
this notion.
I need to get off the Facebook Live because my phone's about to die.
Oh, all good. Well, the rest of this is going to be on Ashley's YouTube channel. I'll also be sharing it. So thank you guys for tuning in, but we're going to finish up the interview now on her YouTube Live. Thank you guys so much for watching, for stopping in. Even if it was just briefly, you'll be able to see this whole thing and more on her YouTube channel. So but yeah. All right. So that's now been shared. But yeah, it's just yeah, with success, man.
Yeah.
And I told you, like, Ashley, we've had a chance to even talk. One of the reasons why I appreciate you is because I know that life isn't always easy. And we've known each other for, it's crazy. You don't think about this, but it's been almost 10 years, Ash.
What?
Yeah, it's been almost 10 years. And it's, I think, hang on, I'm just checking the volume. Okay. But I do think that you're also someone who I see work and who I think you're going to be rewarded for the work that you do, and you're very consistent. And for me, I'm someone who I don't, like I said, sometimes I take breaks from social media because, man, like I said, that sometimes it is not easy, like, generally. Wait, you're still there? It froze. So hopefully you're still there. But if it is just, I guess, a passing thing, yeah, with great power comes responsibility. And so whether it's for you, who I think is someone who's going to be successful, it's important that once we do achieve what we are seeking to achieve, even if it's just the first achievement in life, that we also learn to give back and help elevate others. And I'm not sure if you're still there because it's super frozen now. So if we have to end it here, I will say thank you for your time. Thank you for having me. Maybe we'll be able to reconnect and do a little short follow-up / finish up video. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.